Hello, and today is the day when we talk about another one of the three key concepts that are really important to understand when we're talking about testing and assessment. And that concept today is validity. So today you will find out what validity is and why it is important. And the person to answer those questions is Associate Professor Peter Gu.
So validity is one of those key concepts we often talk about when it comes to testing and assessment. So Peter, I'm very grateful for you to be here today and talk to us about validity. So can you just tell us what it is to start with?
Traditionally, we're talking about validity being content validity, and that is what you cover in a test. So what you indeed test is what you intend to test. But that has moved on to include not just what you cover inside the test, but also your interpretation of the test. You're not interpreting the test score beyond what the test score means. And in addition to the interpretation of the test, we're now also talking about how you use the test. Are you using the test beyond what the test score indicates? So we're talking about three shades of meaning.
Right, three shades of meaning for validity.
Yeah, for validity. So if you're talking about only the content, it's what you include in the test. It's whether what you include in the test are relevant, and are those test tasks and test items, are they relevant? Are they representative? What about the coverage? Are you covering everything you want to cover in that domain of the test? So that's inside the test. But a test can be interpreted in totally different ways, and also can be used in wrong ways. I normally would use eating utensil metaphor. For example, you can use your chopsticks to eat noodles, but the chopsticks, you can't really say that chopsticks is not a good tool for eating noodles, but you can't really say beyond that and say, because it's a good eating utensil, you can't really say that the chopsticks will be good for eating soup as well.
Okay.
So it's what the test is valid and also what the test is valid for.
Okay. So for a classroom teacher, this type of validity you're talking about is obviously the most important.
Sure. It's what you cover inside the test. It's also what you use it for.
Okay, good. And so what can the classroom teacher do to make sure that her test or his tests are valid?
Again, we're talking about what you include in the test, which is the content validity. Also, we're talking about other aspects. For example, when you're talking about validity, you're talking about how good the test is. The judgment of how good the test is can come from inside the test, whether what you cover is indeed what needs to be covered, and are they representative, are they, so that's inside the test. But also you're talking about, I have a test of the same thing that is known to be a good test. Is that test, if somebody gets a good score on this test, will that same person get a good score on another test, which is known to test the same thing? So that's external validity. It's beyond what the test covers. And also, we can be talking about the interpretation of the overall test score, the construct you're trying to get hold of. We have different statistical ways of doing that, but for big tests. For classroom teachers, mainly we're talking about the coverage, the representativeness, and the basically it's the content itself.
So if I should check I'm understanding, to summarize it, so the test a teacher makes should contain material that has been taught.
Exactly. So we're talking about how good a test is for the teacher inside the classroom, for teacher-made tests, which are meant to test how well students have learned something. That's called achievement tests. So for those kind of tests, we're talking about matching the content of what you've taught the students and what you have included in the test.
Okay. And if you're the teacher, so after you've given the test and you want to find out if your questions were good or not, what can you do as the teacher to check them?
Check your curriculum, check your textbook, check what you have covered through that month or that week, depending on what your test is for, and match the kind of content, knowledge, and abilities that you have tried to teach your students with what you're trying to elicit in your test.
So just to wrap up, because we talk about validity, we talk about practicality, we talk about reliability. And so we often say if a test is unreliable, it can't be valid. So can you just talk a little bit about the relationship between reliability and validity?
Basically, validity is everything. It's basically how good that test is. That's validity. When you're talking about reliability, we're talking about consistency. So if your items, your tasks inside the test are not consistently testing the same thing, they're not good.
Okay.
So that's why consistency or reliability can be considered part of reliability as well. Whereas the other way around is not true,
right.
Which basically means if the other way around is true, it will be if something is consistent, it's good, right. But something can be consistently bad.
So there we are. We have the message that validity is everything. And without validity, your tests aren't going to be worth the paper they're written on. So with that message, we'll leave it there. Thank you.